Welcome to the Youth Sport Podcast. My name is Rihanna Poskin, and I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly within youth sport. It feels great when a kid comes up to you and says, "Coach, because of you, my life changed in the best way." It would feel awful to hear that because of you, the coach, a kid doesn't want to have anything to do with it ever again. I believe that kids deserve to have fun, to learn, to grow, to compete, and to play in a great environment. Join me as I interview guests that spill the tea on youth sport in order to help you make an enormous impact with kids right now. This episode of the Youth Sport Podcast is brought to you by Lululemon. I am part of the Lululemon Collective and will receive commissions when you shop through my link. Buying something for you or your loved ones, like my favorite warm down joggers, helps me to continue to bring interesting and empowering conversations for everyone. I have to tell you, when I'm coaching, I want to make sure that I'm dressed appropriately, I'm comfortable, my clothes stand up to all kinds of random situations, and that I have pockets. You never know who's going to ask you to hold something for them or what random things you need to carry with you. The Lululemon warm down joggers take care of all of my needs. I invite you to find your go-to item by browsing through the entire Lululemon site. You won't be disappointed. Please use the link provided in the video description below to start shopping. Welcome back to part 2 with John Coleman, where we discuss risk, wonder, and high performance. The state of wonder has played a big role in your life, including being a core element of your PhD dissertation. Can you just tell me a little bit about the state of wonder?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things for sure. And I didn't really intend, it wasn't clear when I started my PhD, like I'm going to study wonder. It emerged from within. It's like, oh, this is what's been driving me my whole life and continues to, is this state of wonder.
Cool.
And I came across this beautiful excerpt from Da Vinci, one of Da Vinci's journals, where he was walking in nature and he came across this big cavern, and he went in and he looked in, and the excerpt says, "I was standing there with deep seeking eyes looking for something wonderful at the bottom of this dark cave," and realized then at that moment his body position, again, it's a body mind thing. Mental training is, well, the mind is the body, like there's no separation. Descartes told us that, but I don't agree with him. Wake him up from the dead, let's have a chat. And so he recognized that his upper body was leaning in, and he was like that longing and that what is down there. But his forearm was pressed against his knee, and he was kneeling with one leg up, and he was kneeling against it, and he was like, "Oh, my lower body is afraid." And there was this dual experience going on. And so he wrote, "Wonder is a spontaneous state of variably weighed between fear and longing." And that to me is just like, amen, brother. Like, that's it. Like, you summed it up. The way that I would describe that sense of wonder, especially in movement activities and some of what we've talked about today, is if you're cliff jumping off of a cliff into water, we're all going to have some height that is within this range of wonder, the way Da Vinci was talking about it. If it's too low, there's not enough fear, and you're just going to run off and jump in, and you won't even think about it. You just go, and that's fun, and that's nice. If it's too high, there's going to be so much fear, there's no chance you're even going to look over the edge of that cliff. And we all have a range in some way. And then there's this sweet spot where you get to the edge and you look over, and my body's doing it already. I mean, we've grown up cliff jumping in the lake, so we know this well, and my body remembers it well, and jumping off of cliffs and mountains and jumping off of things I really like to do. But leaning over, and you look and you're like, whoa, man, I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe you back off, but then there's something inside you that's like, maybe. And then you look again, and then you're like, oh, and if it's right on that spot of wonder where you do enter that zone of what we talked about with like action sports, where like I could get hurt by this,
Uh-huh.
but it could also be really fun and I might have the ability to do it. And you back and forth, oscillating within this experience of wonder, which is colored by love and fear. The lowest part of our brain, our brainstem, when our brain is developing, and like simple organisms, that's all they have, love and fear. It's like, do I love this? I'm going to go towards it to try and mate with it or eat it. or or am I afraid of it and I'm trying to get away of it? Obviously our brains have evolved that we have quite a few more emotions, but you're in that primal space. And so that is what I'm saying about fear as well. It's like, fear isn't bad, it's
Uh-huh.
amazing.
Uh-huh.
And to lots of people I say, what's your relationship with fear? Because it can evolve, it can grow. And if you've got a really mature relationship with fear, and I don't mean mature and just like adult, but like it's harmonious and there's connection to fear, you're going to do very well in navigating your life in terms of your career, your personal relationships, your life, because like fear then becomes an ally. And you're right, that opens up to so much more of what we could talk about. And that's
Yeah.
what I mean by like the risk skill assessment. And for me, it's almost more of like a wonder assessment. Like, how much is this tugging at my sense of wonder? And what skill set, what resources do I need to go and see this? What are my big dreams that are dreams? They're not real, they're just way out there. What are my goals? They're a little bit more closer. And then what are my plans? And are they synced up and linked that I can discover myself within movement and within this wacky and weird and wonderful thing called life?
Yeah. Well, what I'm just sitting here thinking about while I'm listening to you talk is almost like, okay, so I would love to have any coach that's listening to this create that sense of wonder, or like bring out that sense of wonder, because I don't think you have to create it. I think that what you're
Yeah.
saying is it's already there.
Yeah.
And so if you have kids that are able to, if they're on a hockey team and they have this sense of wonder on the ice, they've got this balance of love and fear in the game, but they're able to find this sweet spot where it's super magical and super fun. Or if you're a mountain biker that's doing crazy stunts and you've done that analysis and you're in that zone where you're able to do it effectively and safely, to the point of what you're considering to be your element of risk and whatever. But what I'm thinking is just the ability, and I think I say it at the beginning of my intro, is just like creating that environment where kids can thrive.
Mhm.
And so, oh man, just the possibility of what you're saying with impacting kids would be huge. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and there's a book called Finite and Infinite Games. With hockey, one of the things I hated the most when I was young was the damn buzzer. That,
Right, because you wanted the
you
game to
know,
go on.
yeah, because it was like 2 minutes, right? We had
Yeah,
a 2 minute shift, and so that was a very finite movement experience, and it's
yeah,
part of it. And you learn in the rhythms and everything. Whereas in the mountains and the water, it's more of an infinite game.
right.
And it's more of an infinite movement experience that you can go through. And so with coaches, it's like, how can you create that? Yeah, how can you create space within the restrictions for wonder?
Mhm.
And that wonder can be like, I wonder if we can win today,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
I wonder if I can score a goal today. I wonder if I can jump over this thing, like whatever it is. Again, this isn't like frou-frou stuff where it's like, oh, now you're gonna be, in a state of wonder, so you're gonna suck at something.
right. Yeah,
You're not gonna learn, you're not gonna grow. It's like, no, again, like I'm speaking from a space where the best people in the world that are these achievers
yeah,
have this sense of wonder and this curiosity of like, I wonder if I can do this, and I wonder how long I can keep doing this,
yeah.
and that wonder as a skill set for high performance.
So what do you think risk is? What's your definition?
I think it's a really great question and really important one, because there's dictionary definitions of it and everything, but we need to have a working definition for ourselves, because it is going to the situation or the context is going to be different for other people of what you think is risky. But for me, risk is entering the unknown. I think that's one element that's always a part of risk. You're entering the unknown, therefore you're making yourself vulnerable. So engaging with risk, there is this aspect of courage in some way, and exposure, and maybe courage, but maybe also like being a fool,
Okay. Yeah.
and just like being naive and just like, I'm just going to go into it. So it's not always this courageous entering the unknown. It can be just like you're kind of, and people, that's what I think people are most worried about, if you're just foolish and just like, they're just entering the unknown, right? So entering the unknown is one aspect of risk. And then, but then you expose something you value to a situation where you might lose that thing that you value. And maybe you lose, and this is when the range of risk is kind of determined, of like, how much can I lose
Mm-hmm.
of this thing that I value, right? And so who are the biggest risk takers? Gamblers, right? Because you're gambling. Like, that is like one of the biggest words to describe, like, almost like foolish risk taking in a way,
Mm-hmm.
where they're gambling with something. And quite often gambling implies the potential of losing all of what you have in a moment, in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
And so gambling typically obviously has that connection with money. And if you go to a casino to gamble, and if the whole thing like roulette or something, and it's like, I've got, this is all my money, this is even more money than I have, can I borrow some money, because I think I'm lucky now. So now you're borrowing money from someone else. So what do
Yeah,
I
that
value?
stresses me out.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, and I'm just going to bet all of it on red or black. Right.
Yeah.
And that's like such a huge risk if you're valuing, in that instance, money, and you're doing it in a condition where you also know the house always wins. This is
Yeah.
just a rule of what's happening. And then in an instant, you're either going to like double your money or lose all of it. Right. So that's this idea of risk, is entering the unknown and exposing something that you value to conditions where you might lose some or all of that thing that you value.
And think about a kid. So I just think about my own kids, and they have a completely different personality at home because they feel safe, right? So they'll joke around, they'll dance, they'll make a funny face,
Mhm.
they'll do all that kind of stuff. And then when I see them in certain situations in public, in their community, they don't show that. That hand, that gambling hand, is hidden.
Right,
And so that risk of them putting themselves out there, of being silly, of being their own person,
right.
it's interesting to see them navigate that space as well.
Absolutely. And so what do they value? They value their self-identity, their, they probably don't really think so much about reputation, but maybe that's starting to enter, their awareness. And at home, or in situations where they feel really protected with like best friends, and situations where we can expose the fringes of ourselves, the weirdness of ourselves, the foolishness, the, hey, I've got
Yeah.
an idea and this might be really silly. And at home it's safe because it's going to be met with support at the very least. And but yeah, if you're in another situation where the conditions change, you might be like, I'm not going to be foolish because I risk that person really judging me, or really, hurting me because of that foolishness or silliness, or that part of me that's on the fringes of me. So what do? I'm going to show them the part of me that I feel is like really, secure, or I'm just going to put up big walls of protection and not
Yeah.
show really, any of myself, kind of thing.
Yeah. So you told me once, a while ago, that you had this specific strategy going into backcountry skiing, and it always stuck with me because I could never picture knowing that I was going into a situation where an avalanche could follow me down the mountain, would be a position where I could be focused and present, because I personally would feel like I would be in fear. So how do you navigate risk?
Thinking about it, for sure, the first thing is planning.
Mhm.
There's planning, there's preparation. Motivation is such a huge one, and I really create a binary in my own awareness of motivation. Is it either ego, or is it wonder, like that we've talked about, with just that sense of wonder.
Yeah.
And okay, so planning, motivation, awareness, what's happening now, flexibility, being flexible as you continue to move towards this thing you're trying to do, and you're getting more information as you're getting closer to that risky thing.
Okay.
And then humility. Humility is such a massive thing. So I'll share an example of what that looks like for me when I go backcountry skiing, and absolutely love this. Like that whole sequence that I'm telling you about, like I absolutely love it. And so, leading up to it, the planning side and the awareness side, we're tracking the weather conditions throughout the whole year, the snow systems that have come through, when it was cold, when it was warm, when there was wind events, all these things, and all that information is locked in the snowpack. It's amazing. When you dig a snow pit, you literally see all the layers of all the weather that's happened since the first snowfall. It's so cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, so the story is right there.
Okay.
So we've got the playbook.
Yes, you know where to look.
We know where to look. And so right away, then the night before, I get so excited packing. You're packing your avalanche gear, your shovel, your beacon, you're checking batteries, you're packing your food, all this stuff. And there is this accumulation of energy that's building. And that, I love that part. And then the next morning you wake up and that check the motivation right away. And if I'm like, oh, this is going to be so great, I'm going to have so much fun, I'm going to ski the best I've ever skied, like it's very ego driven, I need to check the ego right away.
Okay.
Because the mountain always wins. There's no chance. If I'm showing up like, oh, look at me, the mountain's going to bury me. Quite literally could.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so if my motivation is in the right space and I keep checking awareness. So now we're driving to the mountain and I'm looking, and that awareness is staying open to what's happening in the mountains leading up to it and getting information. Where's my ego at? Get to the mountain. And then for those who don't know, so backcountry skiing, you've got a certain binding system that you can walk up the mountain and your heels lift up, and you put skins on the bottom. They're called skins because back in the day, they'd be literally animal skins. They give you more grip. And yeah, you literally walk up the mountain, and then you take the skins off, you lock down the binding, and you ski down. That process, when you get to the parking lot or the side of the road and you start walking up right away. The first time I ever backcountry skied was in Rogers Pass in British Columbia. And I took 5 strides and I said to my friends, like, this is my favorite thing to do.
And you've never done it before.
Never done it before. I hadn't even gone up the mountain. We hadn't skied down, like 5 strides, like this is my favorite thing to do. And so we're going up and you're looking at the trees and the group, and this whole sequence that I'm talking about just keeps cycling through. And for me, I use a traffic light system. And as long as I keep getting green lights, then I keep going. And one of the hardest things is when I get a red light and I have no rational, it's like a gut feeling. Mm-hmm. And because then, and I have done this before, and with the key groups I've worked with that we've played with in the mountains and worked with, we'd have this agreement that if someone has a red light, for whatever reason, we would stop. Because it's a red light, and we discuss, why do you feel this way, whatever. Sometimes I got red lights because, this is going to sound so crazy, but like a tree told me.
Okay.
Like we'd be going up, and sometimes there's these like weird trees that they really look like they're guards, almost like 2 side by side, and you have to kind of like get through. And I'm like, this really feels like security guards.
A sign.
Like, yeah. And it'd be like, are we allowed to go through? Again, the mountain is the boss. And if I'm asking, where can we ski today? Where can we go up? Then I'm in a better position than not. And that's a hard one when you get a hard yellow or a red to say to the group, like, I'm really feeling off. Let's have a chat about it. Mm-hmm. Or if the weather conditions change and you get a yellow or a red light. But if it's green, you keep going, and you're going up, but you're getting all this information. And if you've done an okay job, you haven't put yourself in avalanche danger at all yet. And then you get to the top, and then you look at the run, like, okay, here's where I want to ski. And then you keep the conversation going.
Yeah.
And you ask the mountain, where can I ski? And there's times where that it's not an avalanche, it's called a slough, where there's enough snow that there is going to be snow movement while you're skiing. Mm-hmm. And in places like Alaska, the slough is crazy. It is like a big, big river. You have to manage your slough. And how do you manage it? You have a plan. Again, it comes back to the beginning. Have a plan. Check your ego. Be aware of what's going on. Be flexible. and then be humble about it. And I had a time where I got to that point and I was super excited for the skiing part. And I was like, this is gonna slough. I know snow is gonna move. And I had like 2 or 3 outs if it did. And I was skiing down, and it was such a strange feeling because it felt like I got kicked. Like literally, the thought I had was someone just kicked my boot because my boot went rocketing forward, and it had this big hit,
Yeah.
like literally someone kicked me. And then followed up, the thought was like, that's dumb. Like, who would kick me? There's no one here.
Yeah.
And then the next thought, and it was like instant because of the preparation. I was like, oh, that's the slough. The slough caught me and it kicked me. And instantly I was like, here's my exit right now. And I took that exit, and then the snow went past and it was fine.
Yeah. So when you're talking about that exit, you're kind of evaluating higher ground or just a safe spot to navigate into. What's that look like?
Exactly. It's like, can I get to the side? Where's the snow gonna go? All
Yeah.
those things. And sometimes, depending, it's like I need to go straight and I need to go as fast as I can and try and
Right.
outrun the thing.
Right. That's like
And
almost
obviously,
surfing, where it's like if you catch that wave at the wrong spot, it's going to bury you.
exactly. And so clearly, if we jump from all the preparation of watching the snow and the weather throughout the year, of the preparation in the morning, walking up the mountain, if we jump straight to that part, it sounds crazy. And
Yeah.
it is crazy. If someone like heli skiing with no guides or anything, if someone just plunked you on top of a mountain where there was avalanche danger and you were an okay skier, snowboarder, and you're like, sweet, let's go and ski down, it is crazy. And it's dumb. And that's the foolish aspect of risk that we were talking about. And that's an element that I think a lot of people don't understand, is the people at the highest level of those kinds of activities, like big wave surfing, big mountain free skiing, like mountain biking, that's not the rush. The rush isn't being a gambler, gambling with, okay, like we talked about, taking risk is exposing something you value to a situation where you might lose it. You're valuing, the thing you value is your life and your health, and you could lose it. No one that I know that is at that highest level that I've worked with or interviewed gets the rush out of getting away with something. So many people are like, I got lucky.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Hate that feeling. It's gut wrenching. They're not like, yeah, dude, that's so awesome. I love that feeling. It's like, that sucked. Like, I was so close and I know
Right.
it. And that sucks.
And it almost might feel like you're out of control at that point because you didn't anticipate almost getting in that spot where it could have been life threatening.
Right. And the choices you made in relation to that awareness and the knowledge that you have, yeah, we're foolish. Now, when we're talking about risk, yes, being like trying to solo Everest without oxygen, trying to ride Jaws in Maui, trying to ski or snowboard in Alaska, those conditions inherently have more power to them, more energy to them in a certain way than walking down a sidewalk in a suburb.
Mm-hmm.
And so is there more risk in it? Not necessarily, because some drunk driver could be driving down the road and swerve off and take you out. So
Yeah.
but the condition itself is different. It is different. And that's why it's different, playing scrimmage versus the Stanley Cup finals. Like, there's a different energy there, and with that energy there is a different potential.
Yeah. So if you were to impart any wisdom on maybe just the confidence that goes into it. So we talked about kids just being vulnerable and not showing their hand in terms of their personality. And then there could be this confidence in their sport. So I know personally that I would only try new things when nobody would see me. So
Right.
if I was learning how to juggle, I'd be so embarrassed if someone was watching me and I couldn't keep the ball up X number of times.
Sure.
Or even on the game, I would feel really hesitant about trying something new. So that confidence, that piece that is not so much you skiing down a mountain, it's more just what's your personality look like in terms of exposing risk. Like where would you say a kid could just have more power in the confidence that they bring to their environment?
You nailed a really important element of all of this, is learning.
Yeah.
And what is learning? And if we think of learning as like a set of stairs, and it's the like flat part being context, being environment, and then the up part is context. And
Okay.
so your juggling analogy of like, okay, I'm curious about learning how to juggle. So again, this sense of wonder, like, oh, that'd be kind of cool to juggle. So great, now we got wonder, great starting point.
Yeah.
What environment do you feel safe enough to even throw one ball in the air, risking you might not be able to do it? Are you going to do that in front of all your friends and all these? And they're like, no, probably not. You're going to do it by yourself in your house, or maybe with a parent or a good friend. Like, hey, do you want to learn how to juggle together? And we can both suck at it for a while and enjoy sucking at something. And then so in that environment, you're going to get information like, oh, I actually really like this, and I've developed a tiny bit of skill. So now that like motivation and that confidence starts to grow. You know, in a way, confidence is that byproduct of success.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like, hey, what now? Let's change the context. Let's take a step up. And it's like, I've been working on this with my best friend. I'm like, hey, let's show our parents, or let's show some other friends what we've learned. Like, hey, do you want to see us juggle? And then they do it. So now you feel safe enough. And in flow theory, they talk about, Csikszentmihalyi talks about like a 4% increase of challenge.
Okay.
And basically we could just say like, don't jump to 90% challenge rate, right? Like
Right.
increase a little bit more challenge. And then you show it there. And then, so now you've leveled up, and then it's flat again and you're plateauing, but now you're going to show that next person X amount of times, and then you get more skill, and then you show more and more and more. And then next year on some TV show about talent and juggling chainsaws and flaming things. So confidence in that sense is grounding. Confidence is grounding. When you are comfortable enough, safe enough that your wonder is still alive. And we talked about that of like, if it's too high of a cliff to jump in the water, you're not going to be grounded. You're going to be so scared that you're going to be thinking about the past and the fear that you've had in the past, or the future, and how much this might hurt or whatever. So confidence is grounding, and we need to create environments for ourselves and others that they feel grounded enough, which means they're present, that they can risk something.
Cool. Cool. I like that.
When, I think about this idea of like, how did I learn about risk? One of the ways was I interviewed our mom for my PhD about learning in movement and discovering myself in movement. And I told her, and I thought it was a confession about sliding down our driveway when I was younger. I was on my belly on a skateboard, and we had, obviously, we had a steep driveway, and the curb at the bottom had a big lip that
Yeah.
there was no way I had the skill that I was going to navigate getting the skateboard over the lip and then, keep going. So every time I did it, I would like catch speed. The wheels would hit this lip, the skateboard would come to a complete stop, and I would skip on my belly into the court. And I just did it over and over and over because I don't know, there was some sense of wonder in me, just even about this movement.
Yeah.
And I have zero memory of like, I'm going to be able to navigate this and da 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 da. It was just like, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
And then mom said like, oh yeah, I remember watching that. And I was like, what? It's like, how did you watch it? And she's like, I was, our laundry room looked over it, and she said one time she was just like walking by and she saw me slide down, and she said her first reaction was like, oh no, because she saw me skip out, he's going to be hurt. Her second reaction was, well, wait a second, let's see, is he hurt, is he scared, how hurt is he, da 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 da, just doing her own risk assessment.
Yeah.
And she saw I would just like pop right up, grab the board, run back up, and then so she's just like, oh, he's fine. And then she would just sit there and watch me do it over and over and over. And I was like, Mom, that's kind of amazing, and kind of like, I don't know, like, how did you learn that? Because now as a dad, and in this chat, we've talked about our level of comfort as parents and as coaches, and what environment do we think is safe enough? Again, grounding. So that was an early part. And then when I was a teen and really falling in love with skiing, and getting powder magazines, ski magazines as much as I can. There was an article about Trevor Peterson, who is a backcountry legend in West Coast Canada and making all these first ascents. And there was a line from one of his journals that said, there comes a time where you have to risk something or stand forever with your dreams.
Hmm.
And that line to this day still provokes something inside me. And I love that, because you can dream, and we all dream. We all have these nudges of curiosity, these impulses. And who cares if it's big or small or whatever? For us, it's the nudge towards wonder and towards love and fear. And if we are to realize that dream, we need to risk something. And then that's
Hmm.
up to us. What is the thing that we're risking? What are we willing to risk? What are the conditions? Like, it gets into all those things. But that, to me, as an overarching aspect of this conversation, of the work I do with people, my own life, is, yeah, there comes a time to risk something or stand forever with your dreams. So first part, what are you dreaming about?
Yeah.
What do you wonder about? What's nudging you? And then the second part is, all right, let's go risk something. And what are you risking really when you step into the unknown? And that working definition of risk that I said, yeah, you risk losing that thing. But I think more importantly is, then you open yourself, you expose yourself to finding something about yourself. And that's when the risk is worth it, because you're going to discover something about yourself, about life, about other people. And that, to me, is the reason why we risk things. It's part of this growth, and part of the experience of being human, and part of our evolution.
Yeah. And I think that's so cool for young people to hear right now, because when you're a young person, you don't want to expose yourself to, well, and one, I think the other thing that's really interesting is the accountability. So if you put something out there and make it known to people around you, then there's this expectation that you have to follow through with it. And
Mhm.
so there's that where it's like, okay, if I just don't say anything, then nobody's going to expect anything of me, and I can just stay really safe. And, I've never failed because I haven't said that I was going to do this thing. Nobody knows, right?
Right.
So for a young person to just get this confidence in them to be like, you know what, I'm okay with this. I'm okay with what my peers say. I'm okay with the repercussions of failure. I can learn from it. I can grow. I can, take the right steps in order to get to that goal. And then I think it's really cool when you do get to just even a small goal, and then you say it like, oh, okay, I can do this. And then I can do the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. So yeah, really cool to have that. I think as adults, we kind of learn that stuff as we go, and you can read all the self-help books, and a lot of the information is the same. People are saying the same thing over and over and over again, like work hard, have small actionable steps in order to, go follow along this line. It may go up and down and up and down and up and down, but eventually, if you take the right steps, then eventually you're going to achieve that thing. And if a kid is able to figure that out young, that's just gold.
Yeah, and absolutely. And there's this other element too, that what we're talking about isn't like earning. It's not like a one-time thing, where you earn your Scouts badge for, I don't know, making a fire, and then it's like check mark. Now that thing's there forever. This is an ongoing thing, and
Yeah.
it's going to be cycling through your whole life, where maybe in a certain context you had clear dream and you realized it, or you didn't, but you learned something in that aspect, and then another moment in your life appears, and it's so hard for whatever reason. And I've had this chat with people who are, action sport high performers leading the world, and they're like, oh, but you asked me to stand up in front of people and talk about something, and I'll freak out. Like,
Oh,
put me on
yeah.
top of a 2,000-foot couloir, I'm cool, that's great. And so this aspect of risk and wonder and confidence and grounding in ourselves, another aspect of what I love about it is, yeah, it's ongoing and it's unfolding, and it's not like this one-time thing where you see someone like, oh, that person is so confident, period, right?
Yeah.
And they're willing and able to risk and succeed and this and this, and like, that's not how it works. And if people have that expectation where if you cultivate a little bit of confidence in a certain area, then you're going to be a confident person. You'll be confident in maybe that area at that time in that moment.
Right. Yeah.
Right, but the conditions are going to change,
Yeah.
thankfully, otherwise life
Yeah.
would be super boring. And and so it's more to, in my opinion, it's about learning the art of what we're talking about, and that it's more about being aware that it will change, and that the unknown is always there. I love that aspect of like First Nations, philosophy of the great mystery. The great mystery is in every single thing all the time. And the more we're able to recognize that, then the better off we will be for our growth. And we will avoid the expectation, oh my God, you just opened so much for like self-sabotage, and we create these trap doors and all these things that if I don't tell someone and I underperform, then great, because they don't even know about it. Or if I start saying like, oh well, it's been 6 months since I last did this thing, so it's probably not going to go so great. And so if it
Yeah.
doesn't go great, you've already laid out that terrain, that trapdoor is already there for you to,
Yeah. Well,
rather.
our brother did that because he did not participate in certain sports
Right.
because everybody else, there's five of us, and all four older siblings got the athlete of the year, whatever it was, in elementary school. So
Yeah.
not a super huge deal, but it was a big deal, obviously, for our younger brother. And he self-sabotaged himself because he didn't not want to be the only sibling to not get that award, and under the right circumstances, right? Had he competed in everything and not won, then that would have been hard on him. So he took the way out of just not participating in everything. And then he was like, oh, well, I know why I didn't get it, because I didn't do everything.
Right. And my memory of that, my understanding from chatting with him about it, is like the one sport that was kind of make or break was soccer, which he loved like one of the most. And he was great. He was an awesome soccer player. And this is like elementary school soccer, and he was playing on traveling soccer teams and rep teams, and going, so it wasn't like the risk of soccer because
He had
he was a
that.
really good soccer player, right? It was the risk of like now, and this is a really huge thing. Like this is something that I work with people all the time at all levels of sport: Olympians, Paralympic athletes, high performers, people who are leading in their industries. Is this aspect of being willing to be devastated. Someone said this before. One of the athletes I work with, he's like, I'm willing to be devastated going into the Sochi Olympic Games. He's like, I'm willing to be devastated. I'm like, what do you mean by that? He said it to the whole team. He's like, I'm willing to do absolutely everything, and me realizing I wasn't good enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And sitting with it. Not that I got unlucky or this or that, but really unleashing my full potential, knowing I did it, even having like a personal best, and then knowing it wasn't good enough and sitting with that. He's like, I'm willing to be devastated. That line sticks with me. I love that so much. Like, willing to be devastated. Why? Because you're exposing yourself to yourself. And also in that process, that again, like as we were talking about, that growth.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, then we put up walls, and really we can start to atrophy if we put these walls up around ourselves. I feel like we can get bored with life. We can even like we get spoiled. But
Yeah.
I think of food being spoiled, like it's just sit there, it's not fresh. And then we can get into this state of inertia where we're just kind of like rolling through life, but we're in a state of inertia. So that part of like, be willing to be devastated, not, I wouldn't say, be willing to die for it, right? Again, don't
Yeah.
be silly and don't expose yourself to risk that you're not ready and able to handle, or that's way too big for you. It's like, oh, I just mastered the bunny hill, let's go ski in Alaska.
Yeah.
But it's like that willingness to expose yourself and be devastated in the process of learning who you are. And it's so amazing, right? And when we put the two words of confidence and devastation beside each other in this experience of exposing ourselves to what we're curious about.
Yeah. And let's put this into context too. Your athlete is the best in the entire world. So already they've achieved something that's huge. So they're already on a platform where they've succeeded. And now to find devastation that you're not the best of the best or having your own personal best within that scenario also needs to be checked, because I think that in itself, just making it to the Olympics, I mean, what are the percentages of that even happening? That reality is not even on the spectrum for most of the world.
Right. And to your point of like, this grows and evolves, so too does our perspective. And so that person who is going to the Olympic Games, they know roughly where they are. And some people are going to the Olympic Games knowing that their personal best would put them at like a top 20 kind of thing.
Right.
Right. The medals get the highlights, and the gold medal gets the biggest highlight. But for someone who's like, I just had the best performance of my life, and I'm 25th at the Olympics.
Yeah.
Like, no one other than their friends and maybe teammates, whatever, are going to know that. Like, the general public aren't going to be like, wow, that person was 25th. That's amazing. But I think we should be, because it's like, they were the 25th. Like, there's 24 other people in front of them in the whole world that day doing. Like, imagine in our jobs,
exactly.
you're like, it's like you're the 24th, 25th best person that day. And I think that's a really healthy, and this is where it comes to humility of, like, my kind of working definition of humility is to accept and acknowledge your abilities in relation to something bigger than you. And so this is where it's like, okay, here are my abilities, here's my sense of wonder, here's my skill set, and I can acknowledge that. And yeah, there's people better than me.
Yeah.
And not even other people in comparison, compared to your own dreams.
Right.
Your current abilities, aren't as good. And that's okay. It's not, this is a very important shift for confidence instead of comparison for self-debilitating negative self-talk and beating yourself down, where it's like, oh, I just learned this skill, and then someone's like, well, that person's way better than you, or in your own mind you're like, those people are way better than me, right?
Yeah.
This humility piece, if you can learn that, is such a doorway to growth, because you can acknowledge your abilities and acknowledge that there's more to learn, rather than it being this binary of either I'm the best or I'm not. And if I'm not, it's not good enough, and I need to beat myself up until I am the best, or there's so many weird neurotic things we do about that. So yeah, that's another huge takeaway that I would love to continue learning myself.
Yeah.
And it's surrounding me, in my office space, in my preparation for now. Kind of surfing is more of a main thing where I'm exploring everything we're talking about. And that humility piece of like, okay, what's my skill set? What are my dreams? And what's the gap between the two, and enjoy the experience of that.
Yeah, and just even having kids recognizing that. So often, if a kid is getting praise, it would almost take away from the light of someone else. And so someone might be like, yeah, but I can do that too. And rather than boosting that kid up and being like, yeah, that was awesome. Great job, man. I think there's a side of it where kids are almost positioning themselves in their environment and making sure that they're always at that forefront so that they can be seen as well. And I feel like that comes with development. I feel like that comes with however their brain is operating at that point in time. And, like with little kids, they're super selfish and the world is all about them. And then as they get older, maybe they can recognize that it's like, oh yeah, like we can support each other and we can go into this together. And me complimenting my buddy is going to make his day. And it's also going to give back to me as well.
Right. Exactly. And that, I mean, I'm so in alignment with that, and seeing our little guy, and already the like, I'm faster, I'm better, I'm this, I'm that, and that comparison. Part of it is that just human development of starting to grow and recognize that they're independent little beings, and that their support system, their parents, their caregivers aren't going to be there to take care of every single thing. So yeah, they're navigating the world in a more expansive way. And they're, like I said, confidence is grounding. They're just trying to find grounding. And I think societally, we do a terrible job of how we create the framework of that grounding, of being the best and being good even at something, versus being willing to try and being willing to learn in that process. That doesn't mean there can't be competition.
Yeah.
If anything, it like changes it's like almost this like cooperative competition, which sounds that it's an oxymoron, right? Like you're either cooperating together or you're competing, but there could be a different place where, and this is also a huge thing, that when teammates, either just two people or a whole group, can cultivate this ability, is amazing. And coaches, parents, people who can cultivate this is incredible. Of more of the elastic band theory, where if my teammate makes a huge jump in skill level and everything, and I see that as positive for everyone. And I sit with that of like, whoa, they just surpassed me. And I feel that it makes me gutted. It makes me feel like, I want to be better than them. And then if it's like, well, they're just better than me now, and they're my teammates. So now I have this opportunity to learn from them, to chase them, to like, if in hockey, like they're a forward and I'm a defenseman, I'm going to have to adapt my game and get better because they just made a jump and they're going to get better.
Right.
But if it goes to this ego of like, I'm not as good, therefore, and a downward spiral happens, right? One of the athletes I'm working with is kind of an up and comer Olympic athlete, and one of their teammates is literally the best of all time. He's the GOAT in their thing. Yeah, like literally has won everything, like literally is the greatest of all time in their sport. And there was almost, I was like, how does the team respond to that? And he's like, yeah, so many people like kind of have this person on a pedestal, and there's like this fear almost around them and everything. And I was like, well, how do you feel about it? What do you want to feel about it? And they were like, yeah, I don't know, a kind of mixed feeling. We did a visualization of, and this is like head-to-head competition, so they're not like a team sport. And I was like visualizing this athlete I'm working with beating this person.
Okay.
And it got to the point of where they would actually beat them in the competition, and their mind stopped them. Literally, they were like, the visualization just stopped. And I was like, because there was this block, like this is the greatest person of all time. There's no way I can beat them.
Right.
And it's like, allow whatever your mind needs to even entertain the idea of beating this person. And they did in their mind's eye beat this person. And they're like, wow, my shoulders just dropped, like my heart rate is racing. And I was like, allow the process to continue. And how do you approach your teammate? And he's like, why? He just laughs. He's like, I just apologized to him in his visualization. I was like, oh my God, this is great. And it was just exposing the belief system that he had about this relationship with his teammate. And then it's like, okay, now you have an opportunity to reframe and to build a new relationship with your teammate. And what do you want from this? How do you want this to be? And so we played with that. And I said, you have the greatest opportunity of learning because you have the best performer in your sport of all time so far as a teammate. You get to see how they train, how they work, how they think, how they communicate with coaches, how they react on like everything.
Yeah.
It's like in any industry you have, if there's like the best person currently and you get to learn from them, like the best teacher, the best boss, like you have that person.
It's a cheat sheet right there.
It's right there. And it was so cool to see in the visualization how it just changed and it got faster. And then literally in training, like everything got better. And the person working with like jumped up the leaderboard in these World Cup races and all these things. And so to kids, and it's different with different stages of development versus athletes and kids. But imagine if that was instilled in the environment where someone makes a jump and you acknowledge their gains and you celebrate, and that's amazing. And then you celebrate the whole team. You're like, we are all now better.
Yeah, because you are.
So-and-so, just learned that skill. Like, let's all celebrate that. And now let's get to work because like, who else wants to learn that? And again, this is where it's not just like, just the participation, just the effort, where there is this like, cooperative competition. We can all still have this as we're exposing ourselves to our limitations, which we all have, to learn something and grow. So I don't think it's necessarily an easy thing, but if that were part of the philosophy in youth sport, I just feel like there would be, probably quicker skill development in certain ways, and definitely better team dynamics and all that stuff.
I hope if anybody is listening that they might pick up on this in terms of keeping a team together long enough in order to grow together, because what I have noticed is that there is a lot of fear in even just staying on a high level team. So if there's a group and every year there's tryouts, then I feel like, maybe I'm just making this up, and if you've got young kids, you can chime in here, but there are moments where a kid doesn't feel like they're keeping up with their teammates.
Right.
And then there's this fear that they're going to get cut. And so this could be
Yeah.
even like halfway through a season
Yeah.
and they're on the team. They are a vital part of that team. But because their self-confidence is so rattled by the fact that maybe their development isn't happening as quickly as their teammates, that they might be disposed of the next year. And so I feel like that is a really crappy situation for kids to be in.
I think I totally agree. And again, this comes up with the philosophy of the coaches and the team and what they want to do. And what that environment creates in terms of risk is your sense of belonging and your connection to the team is always under threat.
Yeah.
Right? It's always threatened. And so what is the first thing to go away when that threat gets too big? The willingness to risk something, the willingness to try something new in practice, the willingness to try something new in the game, and to restrict our impulses of growth. And then we become robots and we become overthinking, and we really get stunted. And there's so many different philosophies at, say, like the Olympic level. And I know certain countries have programs where they say you're on the team. You know, let's say come May before the training, you're on the team for this whole next season, no matter what.
Yeah.
And yes, there's maybe like different levels where like the World Cup level are getting, you know, kind of like being in the NHL and then maybe going down to the farm team for a bit and like the philosophy around that and everything. But you're on the team, and to create, like we were talking about earlier, the stairway, and that at least there's this like baseline of safety of my position. So now everyone can be maybe a little bit more inclined to risk something and to be a little bit more free flowing. And if you think about people when it's training on your juggling analogy, if you're going to juggle on your own, no one's around, you're going to be more willing to even be more relaxed in your body, and you're more likely to be able to do that thing.
Yeah.
And then let's say you can juggle 3 bean bags and you can do it quite well. And all of a sudden now it's like, okay, now you have to go do it, and you have to go do it in front of someone that you have a crush on. Right? The conditions have just changed. It's like, oh crap, now I might risk like my being silly and not being good in juggling, and I might risk like this crush might not like me.
Right.
I don't know, silly analogy, but then what happens? One of the first things is you get tense.
Yeah.
Your shoulders come up, your breathing gets limited. And then what happens there? You lose the skill you have to literally juggle. And so if you have kids that have this mindset, and if the coaches or the environment is created like, we need to be on all the time and you need this, and there's 20 other people in line that
Right.
if you don't perform, it's trying to get skill and abilities out of people through fear.
Yeah.
Which I disagree with. And again, it's a philosophical approach. I think some coaches don't even know what their philosophy is. What's your philosophy? What are you trying to do? What age level are you working with? What works with humans who are developing at that level? We know lots about how the brain, the body, the mind works in different stages of growth. And so if there is this philosophy of fear, you might get a couple people who respond okay with that. But by and large, especially with youth, you're going to miss a whole bunch of people for literally the thing you're trying to help them do. And so I wholeheartedly disagree with that kind of fear-based approach for creating a threatening environment so that people will be able to. The other thing that people may try and create in those environments is the ability to perform under pressure, which I do agree with in that sense. When someone has a big enough skill level, a big enough base, a big enough experience level, we will up the challenge deliberately in certain situations with people going into the Olympics to train then the ability to perform on demand and under pressure, where their ability and even maybe their livelihood does feel under threat, where literally I hit this target or I don't, and I'm on the podium or I'm not, where literally I perform and I get the paycheck or I don't. But that's not youth sport.
No.
Right? Like that is way far down the line, and that needs to be very clear. And I don't believe that we're trying to cultivate the ability to perform on demand and under pressure in youth sport. I think it's like, let's create some really great baseline abilities and observe and see what's happening in that highest level of competition for a 10-year-old, for a 12-year-old, you know?
Yeah.
So
Coach Lasky, he was on the podcast as one of the earlier interviews, and he said, just know who you were coaching. And I thought that was so simple.
All right, John, we're wrapping up. Is there anything else that you want to let us know?
Risk, like fear, isn't inherently bad and to be avoided, right? Like risk, just like fear, is just information about what's the potential that's happening right now. And yeah, they need to be managed and navigated and with respect and humility and awareness of who your audience is and who you're coaching or training or whatever. But that's a big thing, I think, is just like, oh, this feels risky, not necessarily a bad thing and needed to be avoided. Oh,
Okay.
this feels risky. Ooh, exciting. I got butterflies in my stomach. I got like, I'm excited. And it was
This
like,
is my
oh,
favorite thing to do.
this is my favorite thing to do. And I'm in the pocket. I'm in that range that it's safe enough that I'm willing to try it. And it's risky enough that I don't know if it's going to work out.
Right. So you have been working on this program that teams can actually use. So can you tell me about what's going on?
The company is Free Flow. That's the name, Free Flow,
Okay,
because it
love it.
ties into everything we're talking about.
Yep.
A little while ago, I was sitting in the ocean, actually, outside waiting for a wave. And I was like, what do I do with people? Like, what is there something that every single time I'm with someone, that this is the main thing of the work that I've been trained to do? Again, so much gratitude for the teachers that I have. Nothing I say is mine. It's all been learned from others. And it's like, everything I do is to support people to free up their flow.
Okay.
And flow in terms of an optimized state of being, like there's a very specific like brain signature around that and chemical releases. And it's been studied for a long time. But that's not the flow I'm talking about. That's part of it. This isn't like this optimal peak performance flow. This is the understanding, and it's more with traditional Chinese medicine and Qigong and spiritual tradition. We're always in a state of flow.
Mhm.
It just, what is the state of flow? Is it expansive? Is it connected? Is it choppy? Is it less connected? It's more of like, what is our flow and how can I open it? And that opening is physical, it's emotional, it's skill, it's everything. And so that simple term, free flow, that's all I'm trying to do, is trying to free people's flow. And when I work with people, I connect with them and find out where the blocks, where the limits. We're always limited. And okay, how do we free up the flow of that block? I have a free flow mental training program, and there's 4 modules. And the first one is find your mind, then know your mind, strengthen your mind, and free your mind.
Nice.
That training program it's big. It's a 4-month, investment of your time and your energy. That it was designed for national Olympic team. I've had general public roll through it. I've had non-athletes roll through it, gain lots from it because it's expansive.
Cool.
And now what I'm doing literally right now is creating smaller content. So more one-off things and week-long training sessions. And so I recognize that this big 4-month investment of time and money isn't for everyone. And now I'm building the breadcrumbs from,
Nice.
the free content to that bigger one. So that's available. And it's freeflowproject.com is the website to check out that flagship program.
I love this. I love this so much. Okay. We have to wrap it up because otherwise people, you would have to take a couple weeks to get through the conversation. And I really hope that this creates some kind of discussion online, and we can, just see how we can impact kids the best that we can. And you've given us so many little bits to think about. And that's just what we're trying to do here, is create some conversation where we can learn, grow, make an impact, and hopefully then that kid, has the best environment possible. So I really appreciate your time. That was awesome.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks. And I really loved it as well. And I mean, if people have questions, then they can shoot me a note. Yeah, I'm excited to share what we're working on in terms of the content. And
Cool.
I hope that's going to be a really great resource for people to support our evolution as individuals, not just as athletes, but as people. And that's the big vision of Free Flow. And I'm so excited to share that with whoever wants it.
Cool. Well, I will
So
link
thanks for your time.
everything. Oh, yeah, so good. I'll link everything here so people can find out more about you, follow your work. And John's also an incredible artist, and the stuff that he puts out there just visually is really magical. So
Thank you.
you can check him out. I will include all of his info and links. And if you want to find out when the next episode drops, always you can sign up on my website, which is rihannaposkin.com. And we will sign off for now. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining me. Thank you, John. I hope you guys are having a great day and live your life with purpose, impact, and let's just make this world the best place that it can be. Okay, bye, guys.